How to depose a dictator. A guide to removing authoritarian rule. Deposing a dictator is a complex, delicate, and often dangerous process. Dictatorship are characterized by the centralization of power in one individual or a small group, who often maintain control through violence, fear, and manipulation. While it is vital to consider the unique circumstances of each dictatorship, there are several general strategies that have historically been used to oust autocratic rulers. These methods are often intertwined with grassroots movements, international pressure, and political maneuvering. This article aims to outline some of the key approaches to challenging and ultimately deposing a dictator. 1. Building a broad-based coalition. One of the first steps in deposing a dictator is to build a coalition of diverse political groups, civil society organizations, and activists who share the common goal of ending the dictatorship. This coalition can include opposition political parties, labor unions, student movements, ethnic or religious groups, and even defectors from the dictator's inner circle. Broad unity helps ensure that there is strength in numbers and that the movement is not easily divided by the regime. It is important for these groups to set aside their differences and focus on their shared objective. While they may have differing political ideologies, cooperation on a common goal, such as democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, can be a powerful unifying force. 2. Nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience. Historically, nonviolent resistance has proven to be one of the most effective methods of challenging dictatorial regimes. Mass protests, strikes, sit-ins, and civil disobedience are tools used to disrupt the functioning of the state and signal to the international community that the regime no longer has the consent of the people. By organizing peaceful demonstrations and mobilizing the masses, the resistance can create a powerful pressure point on the regime. Dictatorship often rely on fear and suppression to maintain control, so when large numbers of people rise up peacefully, it can overwhelm security forces. International attention can also be drawn to these movements, further delegitimizing the dictator's rule. 3. Undermining the dictator's support. Base. Dictators rely on a network of loyalists, military leaders, business elites, and foreign allies to maintain their power. To weaken a dictatorship, efforts must be made to fracture and undermine this support base. Encourage defections. Targeting key military or political figures within the dictator's circle can create cracks in the regime's foundation. Offering safe passage or incentives for those willing to defect can erode the dictator's power base and sow distrust among his closest allies. Economic pressure. Sanctions imposed by foreign governments or international organizations can cripple a dictator's access to financial resources. Economic sanctions can increase internal dissatisfaction and further isolate the regime on the global stage. Exposing corruption. Dictators often amass wealth through corrupt practices. Exposing these financial crimes, through leaks, investigative journalism, or public protests, can undermine the dictator's legitimacy, both domestically and internationally. 4. Military pressure and defections. While nonviolent methods are often preferred for their ability to maintain legitimacy and international support, in some situations, military pressure or defections may be necessary. If the dictator's armed forces begin to show signs of weakness or fracture, it can create an opportunity for regime change. Defections within the military or police forces can lead to significant instability. A popular uprising, supported by military defections, can overwhelm the dictatorship's ability to respond with violence. However, this often requires the careful work of organizing defectors, creating safe zones for soldiers to switch sides, and ensuring that there is sufficient leadership to manage post-dictatorship challenges. In extreme cases, external military intervention or support for an internal coup may be necessary to depose a dictator. However, this method is fraught with complications and must be considered carefully due to the potential for civil war, foreign entanglements, and the long-term consequences of military rule. 5. International support and pressure. International actors can play a crucial role in deposing a dictator. Diplomatic pressure, sanctions, and support for the opposition can all contribute to the weakening of an autocratic regime. Diplomatic isolation. Governments around the world can work together to diplomatically isolate a dictator by suspending their country from international organizations, cutting off trade relations, or recognizing opposition leaders as legitimate representatives of the people. Economic sanctions. International sanctions, such as asset freezes, trade restrictions, and travel bans, can deprive the dictator and his regime of financial resources, weakening their grip on power. Moral support. Providing moral and logistical support to opposition groups can help empower those fighting against the dictatorship. This can include offering asylum to activists, providing financial aid, or facilitating communication with the outside world. 6. Creating a post-dictatorship transition plan after a dictator is deposed. It is crucial to have a clear plan for the transition to democracy or a more stable form of governance. Without a structured transition, the risk of power vacuums, civil war, or the rise of another authoritarian leader is high. Inclusive dialogue. A national dialogue or peace process that includes all political and social groups, including former regime members, is essential to prevent further violence. Creating a government of national unity can help bring about stability and provide a roadmap for democratic reforms. Rebuilding institutions. A focus on rebuilding state institutions, including the judiciary, police, and electoral systems, can help restore the rule of law and ensure that the country does not revert to dictatorship. Truth and reconciliation. In cases where the regime was violent or repressive, it may be important to set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address past human rights abuses and promote healing. 7. Dealing with dictatorial counterattacks. It is important to be prepared for the possibility that the dictator will not relinquish power easily. Dictators often respond with violence, repression, and military crackdowns. It is crucial to have measures in place to protect activists, secure resources for the resistance, and maintain morale among the population. International pressure, such as sanctions or support for military defections, can help mitigate the dictator's ability to retaliate effectively. Additionally, keeping the fight non-violent and emphasizing international law and human rights can help maintain the legitimacy of the opposition. Conclusion. Deposing a dictator is a formidable challenge, but history has shown that it is possible. The success of this endeavor relies on the collective efforts of the people, political allies, international communities, and strategic opposition leaders. Non-violent resistance, undermining the dictator's support base, and external pressure can work in tandem to dismantle an authoritarian regime. However, the struggle does not end with the dictator's removal. A successful transition to democracy requires thoughtful planning, the rebuilding of state institutions, and the creation of a system that guarantees freedoms, justice, and equality for all citizens. While the road to democracy may be long, the eventual goal of a free and fair society is a prize worth fighting for.